Hello, this is Strategy Miscellany, and this is episode 1 of Design Clash, our new Children of a Dead Earth series, in which we take opposing design philosophies and pit them against each other. So, for the first one, I figured I'd do something fairly simple, basically build one big ship and pit it against a bunch of little ships. And the big ship has big guns, and the little ships have little guns and little drones and missiles. And so, that's really the idea is this sort of clash of opposing philosophies. Small is probably better than large, to be honest. So I gave large a little bit of an advantage to compensate for that, and we'll see how this goes. So this is the large class battle cruiser. It's designed for broadsiding, and it costs 400 million credits. It weighs 23.6 thousand tons. It's considerably larger than even a gunship. Let me just look at the comparison here. So this is a gunship. It's actually about the same cost. Or no, it's not. Yeah, it's about twice as heavy as a gunship, and it's about a quarter more expensive. And what did it have on it? So it's a methane-powered ship, big engines on the back, and it's got a lot of different weapons on it here. Most important is probably its big 250 megawatt titanium sapphire near ultraviolet laser. It's got a couple frequency doublers on this here, so it's got real high frequency stuff. It says near ultraviolet, but we're starting to get into the far ultraviolet even with 198 nanometers. And so it can do some serious damage out to some pretty severe ranges. And then it's got these mounts here that, of course, allow it to actually point at different things, armored with, I believe, aramid fiber. And so that's its kind of main laser thing that's useful for anti-drone and anti-missile work, especially. And then for closer in work and for attacking larger targets, we've got the railguns and the coil guns. So we've got this railgun uses 105 megawatts if you include the loader and the turret, I believe, or just the loader, I think. The turret is a separate measurement because it wouldn't necessarily be turning and firing at the same time. Um, my system here is that the 3F means it takes 3 frames to fire. So it fires every 92 milliseconds. Each frame is 33 and a third milliseconds. So every 3 frames of the game time, it's firing off a shot, a 30-gram round going 10.7 kilometers per second. And that makes it have 1.71 megajoules of force per round. And then we've got the coil gun here. Also fires every 3 frames. But it fires an 80-gram round a little bit slower, 7.38 kilometers per second. And that means it fires 2.18 megajoules of energy per shot. So those are the weapons of the large class battle cruiser. It's got 5 coil guns, 5 rail guns, 6 laser turret mounts. It has this one little 4mm stock railgun on the front, basically just to force it to orient broadside properly. And then it's got this armor scheme. So it's got this gold on the broadside facing side just to give it some nice color contrast. And then it's got a centimeter of boron carbide, centimeter of aluminum. That's kind of a double Whipple shield. And also the boron carbide acts as anti-flash for nuclear blasts and to some extent against lasers. And then we have, along the whole front side, we have 4 centimeters of vanadium chromium steel. On part of the back side, just this little kind of end cap here, we have 3 centimeters of vanadium chromium steel, just in case some shots hit it before it's able to turn fully broadside. Then we've got 3.5 centimeters of nitrile rubber for anti-laser, in case a laser burns through all this other stuff. And at the very back, we have 2 centimeters of reinforced carbon-carbon to catch any spalling and generally be a sort of final defense layer. So, looking at the design, there is one thing I should note. It doesn't quite have enough power to power everything at once. It has 991 megawatts of power, which the coil guns and the rail guns together are 975, so that wouldn't leave anything for the 250 megawatts of the laser. So in practice, it's got some extra guns, but the reason for that is that, some of them are going to get shot off. And it's got the radiators protected in the back here, so if it orients broadside properly, it's basically impossible for the enemy to shoot at radiators on this here, is the idea. So that's the large class battle cruiser, a formidable foe for sure. And then opposing it and taking up slightly less weight in total, about 2/3 as much weight, and actually just a little over half as much cost, we have these small class ships, of which I designed 4. First, we have this small class missile boat here. It's got this titanium nitride on the outside to give it this cool, golden color. And I'll open it up in the ship designer. So basically, it's got these conventional cannons on the front, 40mm cannons, fire once per frame. They should be small enough that if they explode, they won't damage the crew module or anything. The ship has a Whipple shield of aluminum and titanium nitride, 2 centimeters of alpha 2 titanium aluminide, just on the front part of it as kind of a front cap, and then 1 centimeter of reinforced carbon-carbon as the final stopping layer. So not nearly as much strength in the armor as the large class, of course, but the idea is there's a lot of these, and they're also smaller, so they're harder targets to hit. Also, it keeps all its radiators on this kind of part below this wire bell, so they're pretty hard to hit from the front. You can see they're not really peeking out so long as this stays straight on. Now, the other main weapon this has is it has 2 microflak blast launchers with 20 missiles apiece. And these guys will fire off these little microflak missiles, as will this 400 kilowatt microflak missile launcher, just to fire them off in a more conventional fashion as opposed to a one big blast. And the microflak missiles, let me get back and show you what those look like. So the microflak missile here, it's not that tiny. It's covered in nitrile rubber as an anti-laser thing. It's got pretty good acceleration. It's got 2.7 kilometers per second at delta V, weighs about 200 kilograms, and has a flak warhead in the front of it here to basically go off and hopefully do some serious damage to the ship. Now that 250 megawatt laser is pretty good at burning through these, so you got to launch them in large numbers if you want to have any shot. Also, all the small class ships, just to note, they all weigh under 2 tons, and pretty much all of them weigh under 1.5 tons. These 1,000 tons, 1.5 kilotons. These small class frigates, they weigh 1.58, the coil gun frigates. So we also have the drone carrier here, which has a bit of an unorthodox shape to it, with these kind of bulges. But the idea is that those protect the radiators somewhat. From the front, it's fairly hard to hit the radiators here. It's got the 3 conventional cannons on the front, got the radiators hiding here, and in the back it has the micro drones. 75 micro drones in total in 3 separate launchers. The armor is basically aluminum, just on the cap for kind of a color thing mostly. Titanium nitride as a Whipple shield type thing, and then 2 centimeters of boron filament as the innermost bulk layer. So again, not much armor, but hopefully it's supposed to be a small target. And I should also note all the small class ships are powered by decane instead of methane, because this makes them slightly less bulky. They have a denser propellant, and so they're slightly less bulky. And I figured that kind of fit the theme. This one also does have 1 gun on its nose, which is a little bit of a weak spot, but it does give it a nice kind of aesthetic, and it gives it a little bit more firepower at the right moment. So looking back, we can look at what the micro drone looks like. So this is our micro drone. It only weighs 500 kilograms. And it's got a tiny bit of aramid fiber on the front over some boron filament. It has almost 2 kilometers per second of delta V, pretty good accelerations. It It's got RCS for turning, lets it turn pretty quickly. That's like engines in the corners on the sides instead of just a gimbal. And it has this little 16 millimeter, one per frame, 7.2 kilojoule turreted cannon. So that's not very much, but you put these together en masse and you can put a lot of fire downrange and start blasting away at, for example, enemy weapon mounts pretty well. These are, again, pretty weak to laser fire. You got to use them in large numbers. So then we've got our small class ships. It would be more thematic probably to just use nothing but drone carriers and missile boats, but it would also probably crash my computer if I tried to put that many projectiles on screen at once. And so instead, most of the ship is using coil guns and rail guns. So we got the frigate here. The frigate has a 5 megawatt laser, green, and it has 6 mounts for that laser in case some of them get shot off. Looking at it here, it's got the 3 in the front, 3 on the sides, and then just as importantly, it has these 4.5 megawatt, 9 millimeter, 7 frame, 326 kilojoule railguns. So they don't fire quite as fast as the big ship's railguns. They don't bring nearly as much delta V into the battle. If I look at them here, they do fire, though, pretty much as fast, if not a little bit faster. They fire 5-gram rounds at 11.4 kilometers per second. So that's pretty darn fast. And that plus the thick boron carbide armor on the rails gives this a very accurate range. I can fire at a capital ship 68 kilometers away. And so it's able to start blasting at that big ship from great range, which is extremely helpful. Then we've got the green laser here. This is more just kind of for anti-missile or anti-drone work. It's not as useful in the battle against this big ship, but it does give it more versatility. Just a green laser. I'm using 1 frequency doubler, not 2. It's not huge. I've got it set to go out to 20 kilometers. It's decent for anti-missile work, kind of too underpowered for much else. But that does mean that this ship does have to power those big railguns. Well, they're small railguns, but they're still, railguns. They still use a lot of electricity. The ship does need a decent amount of reactors, and therefore a decent amount of radiators. I did design this 5 megawatt, 2000 Kelvin fission reactor that allows it to do fairly well with being efficient with heat, but it does still take these big radiators to cool those. Then these for, I think, the laser module probably, and then these guys for the crew. So that's the small class frigate. It's got a fairly good model for its armor. It's got a silver thing. It's got a silicon racing stripe here on the top, just to give it some flair a little bit. Yeah, it's got silver cap, silicon racing stripe, aluminum base, silica aerogel to add to the strength of the Whipple shield, 2 centimeters of amorphous zirconium steel, which is a little cheaper than the vanadium chromium stuff, but almost as good, and 1 centimeter of reinforced carbon-carbon. So then, last but not least, we have our coil frigates. So these are coil frigates. They have these little coil guns here, which fire only once every 23 frames. So about once every 2/3, maybe even 3/4 of a second, they're getting close to. But they do hit with 777 kilojoules of force, so that's pretty good. And they're pretty good at range, if I recall. Yeah, they're not quite as accurate as the others. They're not quite as fast. But they're still pretty good coil guns. I could probably do a better design, but I also did still want to keep it fairly small like this one is. And not using huge amounts of electric power for anything. So we got those. We got another 5 megawatt laser and another 6 turret mounts for that. Well, other than that, it's pretty similar to the other design, really, except for it uses Alpha 2 titanium aluminide instead of instead of using reinforced carbon-carbon. Then it has aluminum and aluminum nitride as kind of a anti-flash and Whipple layer. Well, the aluminum is for Whipple, the aluminum nitride is for anti-flash. And then I really like the kind of tritone effect I got on the top here. It's got silicon, silver, and titanium nitride all filling up a third of it here. Just for a kind of a tritone look. It's sort of like if a bowling shoe were a spacecraft a little bit. And I mean, it's kind of like a pug or something, it's cute in an ugly way. It's great. So that's the small class coil frigate. And so what I'm going to do for this design clash is we're going to be over Enceladus here. Beautiful Enceladus. Um, I'm going to start by piloting the small ships. And we'll go ahead and say they're Liberty Exchange ships, sure. The enemy, the big ship we'll say is RFP. There's different AI choices you can give it. I think the best is probably conservative in this case because you want it to stay broadside. Even if we're out of range, you want it to stay broadside because if it turns to burn straight ahead, it's going to start losing radiators. It's going to start taking all kinds of damage. It's just not going to work. And so I think that's the best thing to have the AI do. Really what we need is for the AI to do something where it sprints in at us uh, with a quick drive to do a quick closing shot towards us. You want it to go fast towards us so that it can close the range quickly. But the problem is I think most of those also do homing as an option. So we'll give it defensive and we'll see how it does. I'll be piloting the small ships first. Then what we'll do is we'll switch sides. I'll see if I can also win piloting the big ship against the small ships. And if I can and it's tied 1-1, then we'll put it AI against AI with what I think are the best AIs for each side. And we'll see how it goes. So let's start round 1. All right, we start very close to each other over Enceladus. There's Saturn over there in the distance. And I'm going to start with a drone strike on their ship. Try and do some plinking damage to some of their systems before we have the big space battle. So I'm going to take my small class drone carrier with its micro drones. And it's got 75. I'm going to launch a flight of 60. And you can see they're so little. They really do just come out in great numbers very quickly. All right, there's our micro drones. I want to do a fairly quick pass to be able to get in range before they can laser me down. So let's see if we can go screaming around and hit them hard. All right, that's a good start. Now let's see if we can make that angle more effective for us. I want to get that perpendicular. Actually, that perpendicular velocity is pretty low. That's pretty good. You can get it a little lower. There we go. Now we're basically approaching them dead on, and we're going to get there in a minute. Unless they dodge. We'll see. I don't think they're having time to dodge. We're just sprinting straight at them. And here we are. 60 drones. Let's set our targets. I want to take out these big rail guns and these big coil guns. I think that's more efficient right now than hitting their laser mounts. And once we get close to range, I'll probably take the range limitations off, but we'll let ourselves get a little closer and see how they do at burning us up beforehand. We're going to be entering their laser range any second now. And yeah, they are just obliterating us with laser fire. I think I'd better turn off the safeties and open fire with the cannons. So we've got 39 of us left out of the initial 60. And off go the cannons. Yep, we're losing them pretty fast, but hopefully this fire can do at least a little bit of damage. If we get lucky, it will. I'm going to pause to see how many I have left. Okay, 15. There's the battle cruiser. And if you zoom out, you can see the whole. There's our initial sort of lance of fire coming towards it, as their laser just scorches our drones to pieces. And that should basically be it for our drones at that point. Yep, we're out of drones, but our cannon fire is coming in towards them, and hopefully it'll do some damage. We'll have to watch. They are oriented broadside against it, just like they should be. And I think they dodged a little bit of it. But here comes some of it that's actually going to hit them. Ah, that's pretty good. Yeah, we took out a laser mount and two of their rail guns. Um, and really pockmarked up their armor pretty bad. Doesn't look like we did any internal damage yet, but that's still a great first strike for our drones. Alright, so now we want to close with the whole fleet, but I would like to close at a fairly slow closing velocity. Okay, why is this telling me that I'm going to engage them in 0 seconds? Let's see what happens. Okay, I guess we're close enough to them that we're actually technically in battle with them now, even though we're out of range, and I think they're out of range of us. So I'm going to set all my ships to homing for now. And we're going to choose our targets. I'd like to also hit their laser mounts and see if we can do some good damage. They're away from us. We're away from them. Yeah, none of our ships are in range to hit them yet. Our railgun frigates are. That's the issue. So our railgun frigates are going to start by opening fire. And I think they should counterstrike. I'm pretty sure I set their battle cruiser to fire back if being fired upon, even if it puts them out of range. But that's what you want to do as the small ships, is you want to do an attack from a great distance away at a very slow intercept. Because if you do it at a close intercept, then they have time to scream in and actually hit you with their weapons. But if you do it at a far intercept like this, especially after softening them up with a drone strike, it's just no contest. You can see we ended up breaking their ship apart. And yeah, really doing a lot of damage there. Basically broke the engines off the back of it and damaged their reactors and probably killed the crew with all that spinning. Although the crew's pretty nestled inside the centers, they might be okay. Anyway, that's what you can do with the small ships against the large. But I think I can also beat the large ship, I think I can also beat the small ships with the large. Let's give it a try. So our allied craft is going to be one large class battle cruiser. Our enemy craft is going to be the small class ships here. Oops. So one drone carrier, one missile boat, 4 frigates, 4 coil frigates. Um, they're going to be the Liberty Exchange, and we're going to be the RFP, just to make things match from last time. And I'm just looking here at what doctrine is probably best for them. I think ranged might actually be a good one for them. So they'll try and hit me with those ranged weapons first. And let's go. All right, here I am. Here they are. I'm going to start by kind of opening up the trajectory. I want to be able to get them on a fast intercept. And I think a good way to start that would be to really widen out to a wide orbit. Okay, they're sending micro flak and micro drones after me, just like I would expect them to. I'm going to widen my orbit out again. Nice thing is all the ships have a decent amount of delta V to maneuver with. They all have at least like 4 clicks. Okay, I'm going to wait until I've caught up to their big ship a little bit. And then we're going to try, or right after they get past me, I'm going to do like a screaming intercept at very high speed. Once I can do that without crashing into the planet. Like maybe about now. All right, so let's see. I want to come in at them at a very high speed, at least like almost a kilometer per second, if not more, because I want to get into close range quickly. I can't let those railguns just sit out there at high range and tear me apart. I've got to crush them before they can do anything to me with those. So here we go. That's pretty good. I don't think that'll crash into Enceladus. Famous last words. But we'll see how this goes. And we'll get there in 10 minutes. Unless they decide to dodge. You can see us accelerating towards them. And so now you see, we're in a pretty good spot. We're going to orient broadside. We're going to fly by them in 1 minute. So pretty soon, I'll take the safeties off. And let's just try and hit their weapons and their big radiators. Their lasers are so small, I'm not that worried about them. And for these, I want to hit their cannons, hope for some explosive damage. Same with the blast launchers, hit those, hope for some explosive damage. And we'll see how this goes. So they are launching micro drones, and now they're firing the railgun. I had better target the micro drones also. Target their cannons on the front should be great for that. And since they're firing at me, I'd better take the range limitations off and return fire with the rail guns, the coil guns, and the 250 megawatt lasers. Let's go. See our blue laser fire coming in, or our blue railgun fire, and our green railgun fire. Well, our blue coil gun fire and our green railgun fire against their red railgun fire. It's very dramatic, very Star Wars. Love it. And you can see how our lasers are just tearing up their poor micro drones. And now comes the impact. You can see their shots are starting to hit us. My shots are starting to hit them. Let's see how this does. As we come in towards them. we're going to be getting more and more accurate. The problem is we're such a big target that they are accurate from extreme ranges. In general, it is better to build small than to build big, I think, in this game. At least for size of ships. It might be worth it to build some high-powered weapons on a small ship. So let me pause for a second and see what the status of their stuff looks like. Okay, this ship appears to be basically out of the melee, as does this one. Basically, all their coil frigates seem to be out of the melee, pretty much. I'm not seeing that much damage to their ships, if any. Except for, we're damaging some of their micro drones pretty well. But nor are they really doing any damage to us. So far, I guess we're just at such ranges we're missing with most of our shots. And these big battles do turn the game into a slideshow a bit, unfortunately. At least for me. Maybe if I had, a super cool gaming PC. Well, channel gets big enough, maybe I'll do that. Anyway, you can hear the rattling of the fire. You can see a little bit of the shots going back and forth. And hopefully, ships will start getting destroyed pretty soon, which should increase my frame rate a little bit. I've pulled this off before in testing, at least I'm pretty sure I have, of defeating these small ships with this large ship. But we'll see if we get lucky or not today. Some of it is just luck of the draw a little bit. Alright, I'm going to pause again and let the messages catch up. Hey, look at that. We took out a couple of their ships. They're firing their conventional cannons at range, which is part of why everything is so slow. They do still have a whole bunch of working micro drones. And they do still have 4 coil frigates and 3 regular frigates, I think. And then 1 missile boat. So I've destroyed 2 of their 10 ships. But the large class battlecruiser has basically taken 0 damage so far. It's all been basically cosmetic. They failed to do a good ranged strike, in part because the AI is just not great at those, unfortunately, a lot of the time. Doesn't seem great at figuring out how to use its ranged missiles often. So, taking stock after a lot of slideshow, we have a nice shot of some of the small class railguns impacting the battle cruiser here, and it looks like doing some damage, even to some of the internal components, but looks like not enough to break the ship or anything yet. I've kind of put methane tanks around the real sensitive parts of the ship as kind of a second layer of defense, and it looks like that's holding up fairly well so far. Meanwhile, on the other side, they haven't taken any ship losses since last time, except for 1 micro drone. And they still have 49 of the darn things flying around. And it looks like actually now firing their cannons, which is just adding to the lag in a wonderful way. Most of these cannon shots so far are going extremely wide. I imagine they'll find their mark eventually. But the large class ship actually has pretty strong engines for a ship of its size, so can actually do some semi-decent dodging, which is nice. Turning off the armor visualizer there. Get a more sort of true color look at what this looks like. It's a nice shot from above there. You can see it firing, it getting hit. And I will resume and see what happens. So, coming back to it again, we've disabled another of their frigates. And so they've lost 3 ships out of their 10 so far. Unfortunately, it's still quite the slideshow. But that's a nice shot of some impacts. Some sort of impact hitting their ship, glancing off it. And you can see the shots going back and forth. You can see so far their cannon fire is still way off angle. At the ranges we're at, that's to be expected. We've lost a railgun. They've lost a ship and some other damaged systems. So, unless they get a lucky hit, I think we can win this, but they might get a lucky hit any second. So, we'll see what happens. So, a lot is happening at once now. I think something must have hit my ship really hard because it's sort of spinning out of its proper alignment a little bit. Maybe one of the tanks blew up and is causing damage to it, although I don't see a damaged tank. Although one of its engines is disabled. That may be the root of the problem here. Those are pretty big engines. On the other hand, though, we're starting to do a lot of damage to their ships. They have their coil gun frigates and they have their missile boat. Um, each of which has taken some damage. The missile boat um, only has one cannon and its blast launchers left. These micro drones are slowly taking damage. And then you've got these coil gun frigates, each of which have lost some of their guns. They have 3 coil frigates, a missile boat, and their micro drones. But they've gotten my battle cruiser to start spinning, which is very dangerous for it. We'll see what happens. And we're getting out of slideshow territory, too. Beautiful. All right, the micro drones have pretty much been taken out, I think, or at least they're out of the way. But now we're starting to lose some systems. They're starting to hit our radiators. This is going to be a close run thing. Especially as those just withering sheets of fire come in. Okay, yep, they won. Barely. They have 1 coil frigate, 1 missile boat, and 13 micro drones that are probably almost out of Delta V. But you know what that means? If the AI was able to beat me, or if I was able to beat the AI and the AI was able to beat me, then we don't even need to do round 3, the AI versus AI battle. And so, Team Small wins 2-0. And there you have it. They eventually got enough shots off, despite all of their ships floating dead in space. Despite all their ships, despite all their micro drones, despite all their losses, in the end, the fleet of small ships was enough to defeat the battle cruiser. I just have to find where the heck it is so I can look at it a little bit. Ah, there it is. Way off screen almost. Yep, they eventually hit it enough that I think they must have taken out the reactors. Well, it has its reactors. What did they take out? I mean, they took out the engines, but if it still has its guns, it should be able to fire. Did they take out the... No, the crew modules are still there. I wonder if they took out all the reactors the radiators had. And with that, you know, all the radiators the reactors had. And with that, well, then the ship can't generate power anymore. And there you have it. It was a damn close run thing. But that is the outcome of the first design clash, a victory 2-0 for Team Building Small. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.